Hello and welcome back to this damnful idealistic crusade. This particular video will be detailing the latest batch of sale titles from Kino Lorber that I picked up. Some from their most recent sale that they did, which also included some of the Cohen titles, very surprisingly. So they were available at a severe discount, far cheaper than normally. And then one or two from their ever-growing going out of print sale. And they've just added more titles to that particular sale in the past couple weeks, and always are adding new batches. So I'm already in need of placing yet another order, and there have been titles that have actually gone out of print from that last batch they uploaded, much to my chagrin. But the Kino going out of print sale is something that you really do have to keep checking back at, and of course their continual site sales are really helpful for trying to build up a Kino Lorber library, which also it helps very much because they seem to release about 1,000 discs at a time, it seems sometimes, and they've had fantastic new announcements for this month and next month and the month after that, and they're just moving along at a really fast clip. So these sales are very helpful in trying to keep up and to make your wallet stretch as far as possible. So this is actually a really interesting group of titles, and of course some are actually silent films as well. So I guess we'll just run through these very quickly because this is an interesting batch, and some real favorites of mine are in here. So to start, I couldn't believe this was included in the sale. This is actually a double feature of Douglas Fairbanks silent films. So it's The Half-Breed paired with The Good Bad Man, neither of which I've gotten to see yet. So I'm very excited to try these. And these are from new restorations and with proper color tinting and scores and everything. So I'm very excited. And they also included brand new audio commentaries for both. So this is a full-on special edition release. And what's really nice is that if you take the disc out and you would wish to display the other film art, that is included on the reverse there. In addition to the commentaries, they include a piece on restoring the Half-Breed. Half-Breed seems really interesting because it's basically a silent film about racism, which is very uncommon for the time period. So I'm doubly excited to finally be able and to actually see this film, and of course at that properly restored and on Blu-ray as well. Donald Sosin did the scores for both, so I believe they're both newly commissioned scores. And again, just a really surprise this was included in the most recent sale. Next, for my favorite actors and actresses shelf, this is another Errol Flynn title, and a nice surprise that Kino brought it out. So they licensed from their Universal deal the 1952 swashbuckler Against All Flags, which is one of the last really good, solid Flynn adventure films or swashbuckling films, and it holds up pretty well. I hadn't seen it in a long while. It does include a new audio commentary and the original trailer, but this is part of their Universal deal, and of course, anytime a Flynn film gets released that I don't have a copy of, or especially if it's released on Blu-ray, it's a must, and thankfully this will go very well with all the many great Flynn titles that Warner Archive has been doing and is continuing to do in their latest release slate for this year. These next titles will be for my director's shelf, so this first one is going for George Cukor, who of course directed the 1932 version of A Bill of Divorcement, which Kino's presented here on Blu-ray. They also have the remake as well, but I was really more interested in seeing the original again, which of course stars John Barrymore and is actually the debut film of Katharine Hepburn, and of course really starts the pairing of Katharine Hepburn with George Cukor, who is really one of the... I know we always talk about actor-director partnerships, but in terms of actress-director partnerships, there are few greater than Hepburn with Cukor. And again, it's been a long while since I've seen this, and there is the 1940s remake as well. But I really am excited to rewatch this because I'm a huge Katharine Hepburn fan, of course, big fan of Cukor, giant fan of John Barrymore, and I saw this when I was much, much younger. And of course, it's also got, I don't know how well this is going to turn out, but Classic horror fans will recognize that's good old David Manners there, who I, of course, adore from the classic Universal Dracula and The Mummy, among other films. So it's always rewarding to see him in the handful of films that he made that were outside the classic Universal horrors. So I probably will have to grab the 40s remake as well, simply for my own nerdy completion purposes, but I was really excited to see this pop up in the sale. This was the lone Cohen title that I picked up, and again, I was just surprised to see it included, and again, so cheap. So I couldn't pass up a Fritz Lang title. This again from the Cohen Film Collection. This is the restored Blu-ray of Hangmen Also Die, which is one of the great noir titles, this being one of the really fantastic noirs that Lang made once he came over to the States, and noir really took off. Again, this is a new remastering of the film with a nice bit of extras, as are included on most Cohen discs. So there's restoration of previously deleted footage, a new 30-minute featurette with Robert Gelroth talking about the film. There's an illustrated essay about the film as well, plus a audio commentary, a German newsreel from 1942, a restoration comparison, and then the new 2014 trailer that was completed for this. I've been wanting to get this ever since it came out, but again, Cohen discs are usually on the pricey side. They can get up as high as $30 or $40. So I was very surprised to see that it was included in the sale. Of course, Kino started distributing Cohen titles, so I guess this will happen every once in a while. Let me pop the disc out so you can see the underlying art. And of course, again, talking about classic Universal horror, if you look again at this art, you can see quite clearly that good old Dwight Frye is in there in one of his latter film roles before his untimely death. It's maybe a stretch calling this noir because it is sort of an espionage spy thriller, one of the great part of that genre that sprung up and really started cranking in World War II once everybody in Hollywood got over the, we can't make anything to upset other countries thing, basically once America entered the war. But it also sort of straddles in and straddles the line with noir that was emerging. So, and of course, Lang really distinguished himself there. So it's like this film is like maybe one foot in Lang's film Fury from 1936 and another in, say, The Big Heat from 1953 when he was in full noir territory. So this is sort of a little bit of both, and I'm really excited to revisit it on this beautiful Cohen Blu-ray release. Next, for my Billy Wilder shelf, this one was a must, as I have to get every Billy Wilder title. This is his remake of the classic Front Page with Jack Lemmon and Walter Matthau, reteamed once again. This is essentially a nice special edition from Kino because there is a nice selection of extras. So it includes a brand new commentary. It includes an interview with the original first assistant director, who of course is Howard Kansdian, or I never know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. If I'm not mistaken, is the same individual who wound up producing Return of the Jedi and working with Lucas in the 80s. And also an interview with Billy Wilder's assistant and then actors from the film, and the original trailers included. So this is definitely not your just plain standard Kino release. I don't think it's a new master or anything, but it's just great to have another Wilder title on Blu-ray. It's been a while since I've seen this. Of course, my favorite version is His Girl Friday, if we're talking about comparing all the versions of the Front Page. And of course, the original version of the Front Page with Pat O'Brien is really great, and I'm so happy that exists on Blu-ray as well. But there is something to be said about the Wilder version, and of course, it's Lemmon and Matthau, and they are substantially older than the way the characters were written, so there is this sort of, for lack of a better term, an old-timey or throwback feel. And of course, it was made in 1974, and it is much later in Wilder's career, and where people were starting to think critically that maybe he was getting a bit past his prime, much like people said about Hitchcock in his late years. So there is a sort of bittersweet quality that way as well. But I'm interested to rewatch it and look at all the extras, because I remember enjoying it for what it was. but of course it does not have the absolute manic, insane drive that His Girl Friday does. But then again, what film really does? But I'm really happy they went ahead and essentially made this into sort of a special edition, and it's not just a DVD master on Blu-ray, that they actually put some time into making some extras. So this is another Kino title, a Kino Blu-ray, I should say, of a Billy Wilder title that really does make a solid Blu-ray entry. So we've got most of Wilder's catalog, most of his directed films on at least good, solid Blu-ray editions, if not full-blown 4K scans and new special editions, but there's a good number of those. And Kino has done ones like, say, for example, their new version of The Lost Weekend, which looks fantastic and is from a new scan with a great commentary. So just another great Wilder title on Blu-ray from Kino. Now this one has definitely a bit of a back history to it, as I'm sure most who know this title on Blu-ray or home video are well aware. But I've been meaning to get it since they finally did come out with it and did correct the master and had extras, and so they included it in the sale. So I finally picked up the William Wyler picture, the classic iconic Western, The Big Country. The video history I refer to is, of course, that when MGM brought this out on Blu-ray, somebody for some unknown reason mistakenly must have thought this was a scope film or anamorphic, so they applied a stretching to it. So when you look at that original Blu-ray, everybody is stretched out. So basically, it almost makes it look like it has CinemaScope bumps from, like, for example, early CinemaScope films with the lens distortion. But the entire film is stretched as if it was, blown up, like it was, like, for example, Invasion of the Body Snatchers, when it had the Superscope process applied to the negative and everything was blown up. Or, again, CinemaScope bumps with everybody having the fatter faces. And that unfortunately made it to disc, and the film was stuck that way for the longest time. And there were many complaints and things. I actually do have that Blu-ray, so I've seen it for myself, and it's rather unfortunate. So usually I just fell back to the old Laserdisc Special Edition, which has a really nice commentary and some extras that are sadly not on here. So if you want to be fully complete, you'll have to have this and the old Laserdisc Special Edition as well. But thankfully, you can now chuck the terrible MGM Blu-ray with the stretching, because Kino announced they were going to do this with extras, and then everybody said, "Hey, you're going to fix the image problem," and they had to look into it, and then they had to invest more time and more money. So it took them a while to come out with this, much later than their original announcement. But very thankfully, they did correct the image distortion problem. So the stretching is gone, so the aspect ratio is correct. Seems to be the same scan and master, but of course with all that awful stretching fixed. And they did come up with a really nice extras package. Some of this is new, some of this maybe was planned for an earlier MGM special edition that never happened, and then some does carry over, but unfortunately it doesn't have absolutely everything from the Laserdisc Special Edition. So again, for that and its commentary, you will have to track that down as well. But what it does have, and fantastic for any Western especially, it has an audio commentary by Sir Christopher Frayling, the noted expert and probably the world's leading authority on Sergio Leone. So, of course, his background in Westerns is massive. He's done commentaries for many other Westerns, including he even did one for The Magnificent Seven, and in addition to all of his Leone commentaries. So I can't wait to check that out. There's a whole documentary, an hour-long documentary on William Wyler. Then there's outtakes from that documentary with Gregory Peck, Charlton Heston, and Billy Wilder. Then there's interviews with Celia Peck, Carrie Peck, and Tony Peck, so the surviving Peck family. An interview with Charlton Heston's son, Fraser. An interview with Catherine Wyler. Then there's a vintage featurette. More featurettes, animated image galleries, so featuring stills from the production, plus the original trailer and the TV spot. What's also really great is they did do reversible art on this release, so this is a full special edition from them. And both of them actually are original poster art, which makes me really happy. So I really like the image on the front, which is actually rather similar to what we got on the Laserdisc in terms of having the principal cast sort of lined up. But then on the reverse, you have a much more stylized, almost for lack of a better term, an almost Saul Bass looking poster. I don't know if he did this, but you'll see what I mean. This nice sort of orange doesn't really come through under the blue, but this reddish orange there, and a much more striking usage of the primary cast. So if you haven't seen this film, this is a great way to start. This is one of the essential iconic Westerns. If you're into Westerns and you haven't seen this, you really should. And it's got a really great extras package from Kino Lorber with a lot of new materials that really we haven't seen before, plus a Sir Christopher Frayling commentary. And also, it's a must for fans of William Wyler, who is one of the great directors of all time, who is not as properly revered as he should be, really, which is a shame considering most of the great directors from the Golden Age of Hollywood and into the 50s and 60s really just don't get that name recognition they should. But this is one of Wyler's best films. This is one of the best Westerns ever made, and you definitely more than get your money's worth in terms of the greatness of the film, its stature as a great Western, the fantastic cast, the fantastic crew, but then this nicely, pretty loaded special edition from Kino Lorber that again fixes that awful stretching problem from the MGM BD. So if you still have that MGM Blu-ray, like I do actually, I've got it on my shelf somewhere, now you can just chuck it and go bye. But yeah, so this is a really great release, highly recommended when it goes on sale again. And then last are two titles from the going out of print sale. They were a little bit pricier, but I just didn't want to miss them because I love both of them. Kind of came to them and finally saw them not too terribly long ago, and then knew they were on Blu-ray from Kino, and then saw they were in the out of print sale. I'm like, I'm not going to miss these because I would really regret it. First up, from 1957, this is not really my sort of preferred genre, but it's so well done that I just couldn't deny how great this little movie was, and it is definitely of the classic 50s sci-fi genre, but particularly the subgenre of giant mutated monsters or natural creatures or things. But this one is, of course, a little bit different because it's not giant ants, it's not a giant grasshopper, it's not a giant spider, and it's not a prehistoric dinosaur. No, it's a prehistoric mollusk. Of course, talking about 1957's aptly titled The Monster That Challenged the World, with this nicely striking original art. Now, the title and everything would indicate that this is very cheesy and not very good, but that would be a complete lie, because when you see this film, it's black and white, spherical 185. It's about basically a small town that becomes menaced by this mutating mollusk who actually, while it seems very simple and doesn't seem like it can move around very much, the actual implications of the danger are far greater than people originally realize. And the army gets involved because all this happens. It's basically disturbed by nuclear testing, and but you don't see the actual creature for the majority of the film. You don't see what happens in the opening, where these two Navy divers are essentially attacked and killed off screen. And then when the creature is seen, it is seen for a particular sequence, in that once they discover the remnants, and then they confront this creature, and then they have to go away and figure out what it is. But then you don't really see it again until much later in the film. And then you see how this affects the town that the army base is near. And the town itself is coastal and near a beach. And then you see certain things that start to ring bells in your head. It's like, man, this is starting to seem familiar. And then eventually, when they're not supposed to go in the water, late at night, a boy and girl sneak off, and they go in the water, essentially going skinny dipping, and then, the heads disappear beneath the surface, and you're like, wait a minute. So I've never seen it confirmed anywhere, but when I first saw this film, it's like, holy crap, this is the movie that influenced Jaws. And I don't know if it was something that Spielberg was aware of, and the notoriously difficult production where the non-working shark and many other things forced them to not be able to show anything. But Spielberg, being such a movie buff and being such a big 50s sci-fi fanatic, I'm sure maybe this was at the back of his mind, how effective this film was by not showing anything. So if you ever wondered what was the film that maybe influenced Jaws the most, it is the monster that challenged the world without question. There are many motifs and themes and sequences that you will recognize, and the film is played rather straight. There's no stupid comedic humor. There's not crazy amounts of rubber puppet monsters that are really unimpressive or very fake. Again, almost everything is done off screen. There's only like one real jump scare in the film, and while it is built to a climax that is, I mean, it's a little bit goofy how it's set up, and you can tell where it's going in terms of the plot construction. It works because all the characters are serious and intelligent. And what's really interesting is the lead army official who winds up becoming the de facto hero of the film is actually played by Tim Holt, the great actor from The Magnificent Ambersons and, of course, Treasure of the Sierra Madre, who went into basically making a lot of B-westerns, and then by this time had really almost retired from the screen, not fully. So it was rare to see him take the lead in a film in a serious straight role that wasn't a lower tier western. And that really, I think, helps give it some more gravitas. It's just a standard Kino label, but what I'm most excited for is the fact that, of course, we do get the original trailer, but this has an audio commentary by the incredible Tom Weaver. And if you've never heard one of his commentary tracks before, they are just about the most jam-packed commentaries in terms of information, but they're also absolutely wry and hysterical. So you might have to listen to it twice, but because most of his commentaries, he talks very quickly, but it's always with a twinkle in the eye, and he does just incredible amounts of research. In fact, I really do think his commentaries for particularly the Val Lewton classic Bedlam and his commentary on some of the Universal horrors, particularly his track for The Wolfman. They're some of the best commentary tracks I've ever heard. They're just incredible. So he's pretty much my favorite commentator of all time. So I'm very excited to hear his thoughts on this film, and I'm sure he will most likely mention the very heavy influence this film seems to have on Jaws. And it's also great on this transfer that we're getting at Letterboxd, because all the previous versions were pretty much opened up, and so I saw this on Laserdisc for the first time, and that was just in Academy ratio. So, and you could tell there was definitely a bit too much headroom, and it was intended for 185. So it'll be a treat to see this in HD and 185, and then enjoy the commentary. But this is a real hidden gem. Even if you're like me and you're not into 50s mutated monster films, this is really many cuts above that, and I think anybody can enjoy this. And then last is a very hard to describe film that took me a long time to see. The DVD is kind of hard to find, and then I was excited to see that Kino put it out on Blu-ray. Now it's in the out of print section, so I definitely suggest get this sooner rather than later. This is a fantastic film that no one talks about. It seems pretty much forgotten, full of incredible performances and a mixture of tones that is completely unexpected, because it starts as one thing, becomes something completely different, and then ends on a extraordinarily amazing dark note. And that is, of course, the 1975 film The Wilby Conspiracy, starring the immortal Michael Caine and the great Sidney Poitier. This is, and of course, Nicole Williamson as well. Again, this is a very hard film to describe. It's one of the few films, it was actually shot in apartheid-era South Africa, and the conditions of which really help to ground the story in a very dark, gritty realism. And you can see in the background, you can see a lot of the tensions and the suffering that was going on. The story does sort of weave in and around that, but basically the Poitier character is falsely accused of crimes and gotten off by his lawyer, but then it's a setup to incriminate him further, so that way the South African secret police can finally locate the head of the underground opposition that Poitiers is involved in, essentially. So it's almost a bit of a spy thriller in that sort of way. But then Kane's character is essentially the boyfriend of the lawyer that gets him off, and they wind up being stuck in a car and having to drive off out of the city as fast as they can before the police show up. And then it becomes a road movie through South Africa, and it's a mismatched buddy cop comedy without the cop part, and they can't stand each other, and it's really got this nasty, sadistic, gritty streak throughout. But also, it's absolutely gut-bustingly funny. It is morbidly hysterical. I did not expect any of this going into it, and the whole time they're essentially followed or shadowed, I should say, by the Nicole Williamson character, and so essentially it's almost got echoes of North by Northwest, because they're on a chase that isn't exactly a chase because there are other motives at play. And then it goes further that the fact that the Poitiers character isn't just trying to reconnect with the underground, but what he's really trying to do is go after a hidden cache of diamonds that are from a previous job, essentially, long before he was arrested. So he's also trying to enrich himself, and Kane's character is essentially in the middle of all this and just like, I don't know what's going on here. And then you have the various factors, I should say factions, trying to operate for their own best interest. So it is a odd mixture of extremely dark, extremely gritty, but then with just morbid, dark humor mixed throughout. And then really sly flourishes and completely wacky things. The film makes many interesting detours that are unexpected. It is one of the most surprising experiences I've ever had going into a film cold and not knowing what to expect. This is a great film, and no one talks about it. It has a really fantastic cast, and what I didn't even know going in, when you get to the third act of the film, a new character is introduced. You can see here on the cover, it is actually the young Rutger Hauer, and this was his first English language role, and he's great in this tiny little part. The film is loaded with great character actors, and again, people you don't expect to show up. Unfortunately, it's not got any extras, but this is a lot better than the old DVD, which is unfortunately non-anamorphic and itself expensive and hard to find. So definitely, if any of this sounds interesting, get a copy of this before it goes out of print, because I don't think anybody else is going to license this film out on Blu-ray anytime soon, because it is that obscure. But it is a fantastic film. It packs one hell of a punch, and particularly the ending is just outstanding. It's actually, I think, one of Michael Caine's best on-screen moments, the ending of this film. So there are little echoes of many other films. It is a really interesting ride, and completely unexpected by the time you get to that ending, because you've gone through so many different things. And again, this film has absolutely gut-busting, darkly bitter, hysterical moments in it. So that is The Wilby Conspiracy, one of the great underrated gems of the whole 1970s, on Blu-ray from Kino Lorber in their out-of-print section. So that does it for this particular video. Again, I was just going over the titles I picked up from Kino Lorber, and now that they've added, yet again, more titles, it's now time to just load up the cart once more, or check things off from the wish list to hit that all-important $50 free shipping threshold. It's great that Kino does this, and that way we're all able to chip away at the just vast catalog of discs that they keep putting out. But they're moving along at a great clip, as I said before, and this is just a great way to just try and keep up, because they show no signs of stopping, and with their giant Universal deal, the floodgates have really opened. And even if everything can't be a new 4K scan and a special edition, it's at least great seeing all these fantastic, unbelievable titles coming to Blu-ray. They're doing more and more titles, more silent films, more films from the 30s and 40s, more really obscure Universal-held titles, and now they've recently announced they're going to be doing some of the fantastic classic horror films outside of the classic monsters. So they're getting into more of the the vaults, and they're finally bringing films like Secret of the Blue Room to Blu-ray, which is really exciting. So here are the spines again. Definitely leave a comment below with any Kino thoughts or titles you may have picked up from their seemingly never-ending sales, and hopefully I can grab a few more before more things go out of print. And it doesn't seem like they're ever going to be stopping this anytime soon. They're just going to keep updating, and then in addition to the consistent site sales. So Kino Lorber's website, their online store, has become a really great resource, which is a nice surprise. It's great to have a good outlet for a particular label where it's pretty straightforward, and there are frequent sales, great discounts, and a pretty good shipping that's rather quick, at least to me, and that all-important $50 free shipping threshold. So there's a number of titles that I really want to get that they've just released new, so probably what I'll do is maybe build a little bundle and chip away at a few more of the out-of-print titles before they're completely gone. Because again, they added a whole new batch, and unfortunately some of those have already disappeared, and I'm kicking myself, and I'm like, why didn't I do it? No, I waited too long. So with that, sometimes it is better to just go ahead and indulge in the impulse buy, as opposed to trying to be a little bit more sensible. So with that, thanks ever so much for watching, and keep your disc spinning, keep physical media alive.